What's up guys, Merciless Vaughn here, back with another video, and in this video I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to do damage with stamina. So hopefully you guys enjoy the video. If you find these tips and tricks helpful, please be sure to leave a like. If you're new to the channel or you've been here for a while, please consider hitting that subscribe button, and if you want to know when I upload again, all you gotta do is just turn on the notification bell. And without wasting any more time, let's go ahead and get started. First things first, if you are a stamina DPS, make sure you put all 64 points in the stamina. If you have some points in the health just because you want a little more health, just take those out and put them in the stamina. The reason why you want to have all 64 points into stamina is because when you are a stamina DPS, your abilities will use, well, mostly stamina. So you want to have as much stamina as possible. The more stamina you have, the better. If you're low on health, don't worry about it. You'll get health from foods and stuff, so just don't worry about the low health. And also, among the stone you can run is the shadow. If you want to use other ones, you can. It's just that the shadow is good for crit damage. Alright, so next we're going to take a look at some gear that you can use for stamina DPS. I'll kind of do a beginner, intermediate, and in-game advanced build. So yeah. First things first, I'm going to assume that you are already CP 160. So if you're not CP 160, you just might want to go ahead and get there, then try to get the gear or farm the gear while you're trying to get the CP 160. So when gearing in the Elder Scrolls Online, usually you'll have two 5P sets, a monster set, and that's pretty much it. So yeah. The two 5 pieces will go, one 5 piece will go on the chest, waist, hands, legs, and feet. And then the other 5 piece will go on the ring. And then the necklace. So yeah, you'll have the rings, the necklace, and then the weapon will count as the 4th and 5th pieces. If you use like great swords, that will be counted as two-handed, so you only need one of those. But if you're going to use dual wield weapons, then you'll need one for the main hand and the offhand. And then the monster set will go on the head and the shoulders. And for the first piece of gear we're going to look at is a craftable set called Hunting's Rage. I don't have the full set because I just started deleting it because I didn't need it anymore, so just keep that in mind. So Hunting's Rage, it gives you 2 pieces, gives you weapon critical, 3 gives you maximum stamina, 4 pieces gives you more weapon critical, and 5 pieces gives you weapon damage. So yeah, this is just a good set to have while you're trying to farm for other gear sets. So if you can just go ahead and craft this, then that's cool too. Or if you can't craft this, or you don't have the right number of traits research, you can just ask a friend, one of your guild mates if you're in a guild, or just find a crafter and they'll be able to craft you this. Hopefully they won't bust your head over it for trying to craft it, so yeah. But if you are able to craft it, the locations for this set are, for the Outer Mirror Dominion, it is in Reaper's March. You craft it here at the Broken Arch. For the Daggerfall Covenant, it is here in this location. It can be crafted here. And for the Evanhart pack, it'd be crafted in the Rift right here. And those are the locations for the Hunting's Rage set. So like I said earlier, I just started kind of deleting the Hunting's Rage, so just kind of pretend like I have the other pieces here. And so for the for the second 5 piece on the jewelry and weapon, you can run a set called Briarheart. It's a decent set. 2 pieces gives you the weapon critical, 3 pieces gives you the maximum stamina, 4 pieces gives you more weapon critical, and the 5 piece bonus is when you deal critical damage, you increase your weapon damage by a certain amount for 10 seconds. And while this effect is active, your critical strike heals you, and this effect can occur once every 15 seconds and scales off your higher max magicka or stamina. Since this is a stamina build, it's going to go off of our stamina, and that's why it's also important to make sure you put 64 points into your stamina attributes. And as you can see, I'm only getting the 3 piece bonus because I have Briarheart on both rings, the necklace, And if I come up here to the weapon, I like to use the greatsword. And so now, since this is considered two-handed, I'm now getting those pieces. Switch to the front bar. And there, now I'm getting the 4 and 5 piece bonus. Briarheart is a set that you get from Rothagar. Rothagar is a DLC area, so just keep that in mind. This is Rothagar right here. So if you don't have Rothagar unlocked, or you just don't have ESO Plus, then there are other sets that you can use. You can just basically come up to the collections, come to the sets, and just basically go through the different faction zones and then the dungeons to see what replacement set for Briarheart you can use. If you don't have ESO Plus and you just can't get Briarheart, you can get this set. This set comes from the Daggerfall Covenant in this area, and the set bonus gives you maximum stamina, weapon damage, and physical penetration. The stamina is good, the weapon damage is good, and the penetration is really good. The more penetration you have, the more defense of the targets of your enemies that you ignore. Alright, so now since you have Hunding's Rage and Briarheart, or the other set that I recommended if you don't have Briarheart or you just can't get it, and then once you do that, what's the next set you can go for? Well, for the next set, you can go for 2 different kinds of sets. One for solo, one for group, but both work really well for solo and group. These are my recommendations. You can just pick whatever set you want from the collections and sets and just go through the different dungeons and see which one sounds good to you. But for me personally, one set you can use, a set that I use for solo, is Togsven. Togsven, it gives you weapon critical for the 2 and 3 pieces. 4 pieces gives you physical penetration, and then the 5 piece bonus, you deal critical damage, you gain a stack of precision, increasing your weapon damage for 5 seconds up to 10 stacks. At max stacks, you gain minor force, increasing your critical damage done by 10%. This is a really good set, especially when you pair it with Briarheart, because when you crit, you get a stack, and at 10 stacks, you increase your critical damage by 10%. Now, the thing about Togsven is this is a DLC dungeon set, so if you don't have ESO Plus, I'll recommend a different set that you can use. But yeah, just know that if you do have ESO Plus, and then if this is a set that sounds good to you, you can get this from Frost Vault. Now, another set that you can use if you don't want to use this, or you like to play in groups a lot, is Kenra's. Kenra's is another DLC set that drops from Black Drake Villa. And this set bonus, 2 pieces gives you weapon damage, 3 pieces gives you weapon critical, 4 pieces gives you more weapon damage, and the 5 piece bonus is when you deal damage with a light or heavy attack, you gain a stack of burning heart for 5 seconds up to 5 stacks. While at 5 stacks, you generate an aura of wrath, granting you major berserk, increasing your damage done by 10%. While you have aura of wrath, allies within 12 meters of you gain minor berserk, increasing their damage done by 5%. So this also works well for solo, but it also works great in groups because your groups get that 5% damage increase. So this is a good set to use if you like to run dungeons a lot. And now I didn't go into the monster set. Monster set for stamina DPSs, I personally don't really use any monster sets for stamina DPS. I mean, there are some that are good, but I just don't like using monster sets. I just kind of mix and match. I just use this. The 1 piece gives me stamina recovery, and then I just have this to have that extra weapon damage. But if you want to run a monster set, you can. It's just my personal preference is that I just really don't run a monster set because there isn't one that I really like. This one is really good. 2 pieces is when you take damage, you have a 6% chance to generate ultimate, increase your resistances by a certain amount for 5 seconds. So if you're a solo player, that sounds good. You can use this in groups too. A monster set you can use if you're a stamina DPS is this one. It drops some Cradle of Shadows. Cradle of Shadows is a DLC dungeon, so just know that. The one piece gives you weapon damage. The two pieces, when you deal damage, you have a 20% chance to spawn orbs that deals disease damage in front of you. And this just scales off the higher your weapon damage is. So yeah, if you have ESO Plus and this set sounds good to you, you can use this set if you want to. And now you can't forget about the back bar weapon. Here I have the Maelstrom's Perfected Bow. Really, when you're DPS, Maelstrom weapons will always be on your back bar until something comes along to replace it. But I don't see that happening anytime soon, so we'll just go with Maelstrom weapons. And for this one, we have the bow. If you don't have the perfected bow, that's fine. The imperfected one can work too. But really what we're getting from the bow is that increased damage that you get from volley when you use this bow. That's why we have this here. And the reason why we're going to use this bow because it increases the damage of our volley, and volley is a good DLT ability. Alright, and now I'm kind of going to go into an end game build. And for the end game build, I usually do something like this. And the reason I really don't use a monster set is because I use the Vastrum dual-handed weapons. Here, kind of like this. I have two swords here. You can use swords, daggers, whatever you want to use. I just have these swords right here just for this video. And then here, as you can see, these dual wield weapons gives me weapon critical, and then the hidden blade deals more damage to enemies under 100% health, and you restore stamina if the target is below 50% health if you hit them with the hidden blade. That's what I usually do right here, since I'm not getting the last two pieces from the Briarheart Greatsword, or if you want, you can use the dual-handed Briarheart weapons too, as long as you have two of them and get the 4th and 5th bonus. But as you can see right here, I replaced that Greatsword with these weapons here. And since I replaced them, I wasn't getting the 4 and 5 piece anymore, and that's why I have Briarheart shoulders and the Briarheart helmet right here. And now for a trial set, I don't have it yet, mostly because I don't do trials. And when I do trials, however often that is, I can't get lucky enough. Relican. This is currently the trial set I'm going for. It gives you weapon critical, minor slayer, increases your damage done to dungeon, trial, and arena monsters, gives you weapon critical. And then the 5th bonus is your light and heavy attacks apply a stack of harmful wounds to your targets for 5 seconds. It deals physical damage per stack every second. This effect can stack every half second up to 10 times, and it scales off your weapon damage. So this is currently the sets that I am going for. Once I get this set, I will be using this most of the time whenever I'm soloing and in group dungeons. So if you're ready for trials and you can get your hands on this set, by all means, go ahead. If there's a different trial set you want to use, you can go ahead and do that. And that's pretty much it for the gear. This is just my personal preference for gear. If you have your own way of setting your gear up, then by all means, just go ahead and do it. But I do recommend that you try to get Hunding's Rage. Hunding's Rage is a really good starting set to use for when you first get the CP 160. And even if you don't have ESO Plus and you still want to use Briarheart, if you have the gold, you can get some Briarheart pieces for cheap from the guild traders. And then you can just get rings, necklace, and then you can get a Briarheart greatsword, or you can get Briarheart one-handed weapons, and just make sure you put those there. And then, you know, you can just use Kenra's if you want, or Togsvins. It's really up to you. If you want to use a monster set, you can. So, yeah. The only bad thing about my gear setup is that it's mostly filled with DLC sets. So if you don't have any DLC sets, then you really can't use any of this except for Hunting's Rage. And then if you want to use Briar Hearts, you're just going to have to buy it. So that's pretty much the downside of this gear setup that I showed you. And now to go into the skills. Skills, you can just, like I said in the previous video, it's really just depends on what class you play. Most classes have abilities that morph into stamina abilities, so you'll just use those, but some classes don't. And then you'll just mostly get your stamina DPS skills from the weapons skill lines. But here you can use this as a template. I have Endless Hail, Caltrops, and then Resolving Vigor. Here, Endless Hail, this will be the ability that doesn't go away on your back bar. And that's because I'm using the Maelstrom Arena Bow. If you don't have the Maelstrom Arena Bow, you can still put this here because it's a good damage over time ability. And you just want to get in the habit of having it here for when you do get the Maelstrom Arena Bow. Caltrops, this is a good damage over time ability. And yeah, as you can see, it does physical damage over time. It reduces their enemy's movement speed. And enemies who take damage from Caltrops have major bleach applied to them, reducing their resistances for 3 seconds. This you get from the Assault skill line. And in order to level that up, you have to do PvP, unfortunately. But if you're in the PvP, then you can just go ahead and get it. Or if you just want to like do the daily battlegrounds, you can get that. It'll just take longer than just grinding PvP. But once you get it, it's really worth it because this is a good damage over time ability. Also, another skill that you'll use from the Assault tree is Vigor. This will be your healing. I use Resolving Vigor. The other morph is called Echoing Vigor. I believe you can use that too if you want. I haven't really used it. I'll probably try it out in one of my builds, but that probably will be no time soon. So yeah, these are basically the 3 skills that won't go away when you're a stamina DPS. But if you're in a group, then you can switch this out with, if you want to, Barb Trap. This gives you crit damage and it deals bleed damage and an additional bleed damage over time when the trap activates. So really it's a lot of bleed damage. This is a good damage over time ability. So if you're soloing, you can use Resolving Vigor. If you're not soloing, then you can use Beast Trap. And also you use Beast Trap to get that Fighter's Guild passive, Slayer, and increases your weapon damage for each Fighter Guild ability slotted. So pretty much if you're in a group, you have that there. Even in solo, if you want to put Resolving Vigor here on the back bar, you can. That way you can have Bar Trapped here and get even more weapon damage. And also, since my Fighter's Guild is it's halfway there to level 10, I do plan on putting Dawnbreaker right here for my ultimate. But I won't use it. I'll use Greater Storm Atronach. I'll just have it on my back bar. Once I get my ult, I'll use this. Dawnbreaker will be right here just because of the Fighter's Guild passive. So I can get that 6% increase weapon damage bonus. So once I get Fighter's Guild 10, Dawnbreaker will go right there. I'll have Barb Trapped, and then the bonus from Slayer will increase. But the ultimate I'll use will be the Atronach, which will be on my back bar. Alright, so now what do you put on the other 2 slots on your back bar? Really, the same applies for stamina DPS. You just put your buffs here. Buffs for stamina DPS on a stamina sorcerer would be Hurricane and Critical Surge. Yes, even as a stamina DPS, you will still want to use Critical Surge because Critical Surge gives you major brutality, increasing your weapon damage for a few seconds. And when you deal critical damage, it heals you. So you will still use this even if you are a stamina sorcerer. And then here, Hurricane. It's a area of effect ability. It deals damage and it grows. And I also have increased resistances, and I have my movement speed increased by 15%. So really, these are my 2 buffs, and I have my heal, and then I have my 2 damage over time abilities. And this is just how I like to have my bar set up. I work from left to right. I just have my buffs. I have a heal if I'm soloing, and then I have my damaging abilities. Here, sometimes I don't have vigor right there. I usually have dark deal. Dark deal, it restores health and stamina, and then an additional stamina over time at the cost of magicka. This is how you have my back bar set up when I'm soloing or in a group. I have my buffs, then I just start attacking, and then I use my damage over time abilities. Switch my front bar, then I just activate this, and then I just go from there. Alright, so now for the front bar. What skills do you use on the front bar? Honestly, it depends on the class, but as a stamina DPS, it mostly depends on what weapon you use. If you like two-handed, some two-handed skills that you would use is Executioners. Executioners is really good. It's an execute. It deals physical damage, and it deals up to 4% more damage to enemies with less than 50% health. Now, I know it says 50% health, but don't get the idea that you start using this at 50%. This, I see a lot of new players make this mistake. They put Executioners on here, and then they start using this at 50%. But really, all execute abilities you want to use around the 25-20% health mark. When the enemies get to 25-20% health, this is when you really want to start using it, not at 50% health. I know it says 50% health, but really just get into the habit of using all executes around 25% health or 20% health, unless otherwise stated by the execute that you use. But some classes, like the Nightblade, the Stamina Nightblade, they have a Stamina execute ability, so you can use that instead of Executioners. It's just that the Stamp Sorcerers don't have a Stamina execute ability, so here I just put Executioners. Now, if you are in group or solo, Brawlers is really good. It does damage in a small area, and it gives you a damage shield. And as you can see at the bottom, it gives you a damage shield for 6 seconds, and each enemy hit increases the shield strength. So if you're in trouble, you can just pretty much use this as your shield. You can swap to your back bar if you have vigor on the back bar, or if you have vigor on your front bar, you can just go ahead and just spam that while this shield is active. And then another ability that you can use is Wrecking Blow. This is insanely good. It gives you Empower, increasing your damage of your light and heavy attacks. So really, yeah, if you have this here, you just make sure you light attack in between every ability use, like you're supposed to do if you're a DPS, or just light attack in between ability use, even if you are a healer and tank. Just make sure you light attack in between your ability use. It's important to do that. And as for this last slot right here, it honestly depends on the class or what you want to do. If you want, you can put momentum here. It gives you major brutality, and it gives you minor endurance, increasing your stamina recovery by 15% for 17 seconds. But I really don't need this because since I'm a stamina sorcerer, I'm getting major brutality from crit surge, and I'm already getting stamina back from this right here, so I really don't need momentum. But the ability I have right here is Bound Armaments. This ability right here, while I have it slotted, it increases my max stamina and increases the damage done by my light attacks. And also, while this ability is active, if I light attack the enemy 4 times, I have these little daggers that spawn around me, and I get to activate this ability again that deals physical damage. So yeah, and that's pretty much it. Ultimate Dawnbreaker will go right here, but since I don't have a level 10, I just have this right here. And ultimate really for any stamina DPS build is personal preference, really. It's up to you what you want to use. And that's pretty much it. This is for if you use two-handed. This is what a two-handed setup will look like. Executioners, or if you have a class ability execute, you can put that right there, and then you'll have Brawlers, Wrecking Blow. Now that was a two-handed setup. Now if you want to use dual wield, you can. A good dual wield setup to use would be Whirling Blades. This is kind of like Executioner, to where it deals more damage to enemies with less than 50% health, but this only goes up to 100% more damage. Now, you can use this when the enemies are less than 50% health, since this is an area of effect ability, but you can kind of treat this like an execute as well. Use this when the enemies are below 25% health. So yeah, 25% and below is when you can use this ability. Another ability to use is Rapid Strikes. This is an ability I like to use. Each hit increases the damage of the subsequent hit by 3%, and then the final hit deals 300% more damage. So yeah, basically this ability just stabs the target 5 times, and each hit increases its damage, and then the final hit deals 300% more damage. So just make sure you get that last hit from this ability so you can get that 300% more damage. And then for the last one, it's honestly up to you. If you do have the Vastrum Hollow weapons, then this would go here. So you can get the bonus from the Vastrum Hollow weapons. And this also gives you Major Brutality, which increases your weapon damage, but I don't really need this since I'm getting this from Crit Surge. You can use Deadly Cloak if you want. This is another damage area ability, and it also reduces your damage taken from area attacks by 20%. And you can even use this. You can use either Morph, whichever one you want. This is a damage over time bleed ability, so if you want to use that, you can. Really, it's just up to you. And one more thing, make sure you read the passive abilities. If you use dual wield, just make sure you read the passive abilities. And with the dual wield, just make sure you know what weapon you're using. And by what I mean by that is there's axes, maces, swords, and daggers. As you can see, each weapon type deals a different passive ability. Axes deal increased critical damage, maces increases your armor penetration, swords increases your weapon damage, and daggers increases your crit chance. So just know what weapons you want to use, whether it be daggers, swords, maces, or axes. And it's the same thing with two-handed. As you can see, swords deal weapon damage, axes increases your crit damage, and maces increases your armor penetration. So just know which one you want to use, whether it be two-handed or dual wield. If it's a two-handed sword, axe, or mace, then you can see what each of those do. And same thing for dual wield. If you want to use axe, mace, sword, or daggers. That's also important to know about skill setups in the build. Alright, so last and not least, I'm going to go over this quickly. Champion points. Really, for DPS, you don't have to focus too much on this at all. In here, the important thing is make sure you have this. If you're a stamina DPS, Bloody Renewal. Every time you kill an enemy, you restore stamina. That's important to have. Real quick, in the blue tree, make sure you have Precision, Fighting Finesse. If you're in a group, Backstabber. If you're soloing, I'm currently working on getting this, Untamed Aggression. The higher this is, the more weapon and spell damage you have. But since we're stamina, worried about weapon damage. I'm currently getting that to 50, so I can slot that out with Backstabber. Because when you solo, you'll rarely get behind the enemy's back. When you do, you'll get that increased crit damage, but most of the time, you won't be behind the enemy's back. So going here into the elbow, Piercing, Battle Mastery, Mighty. Come up here, and it depends on what skills you're using. If you're using a lot of damage over time abilities, use this. If you're doing single target damage, you have this. If you're doing direct damage, this. And then if you have a lot of area of effect abilities, you do that. And that's pretty much it for damage for champion points. This tree, well, I guess the important thing to have here would be Rationer, which increases the duration of your food. The longer your food's up, the longer your increased stats will last is when you have Rationer up. So yeah, just make sure you have this. Alright, and that's pretty much it for stamina DPS. Now, a couple pointers is, like, the skills. I know some classes have more abilities that morph into stamina damaging abilities. So that's why you really want to use this skill advisor. So make sure you use the skill advisor depending on whatever class you are to help you set up your skills. And so that's pretty much it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Hopefully you learned some things. If you're a new player, if you have any questions, let me know in the comment section down below. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. And as usual, until next time.